Hello and welcome to this video guide to Maelstrom Wanderer. Now, this video is going to be structured quite differently from all the other ones. This video is more than everything you need to know about Maelstrom Wanderer. I'm going to go in depth on every single card in my deck, so this is definitely a video to put on your second monitor in the background and just have play. Unless you just want to listen to me in depth, but I've already made a budget guide on Maelstrom Wanderer, I've made a regular guide. This is now way more information, and this is my most up-to-date deck list. So, without further ado, let's get on it. And I'm going to switch my camera to over here. So the first card we have to talk about, obviously, is Maelstrom Wanderer themselves. Why do I love this card? It's very simple. It has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 words on it. You have haste. I love playing aggressive strategies when I'm playing. I want my games to end via combat damage often, and this is one of the best ways to get a lot of it out quickly. Haste 7 power, that's already 3 turns for a commander kill, that doesn't actually come up that much. And Cascade. When I started playing Magic like 10 years ago and I had my own rubbish blog, I made an article on my favourite mechanics, and Cascade came out on top. Now, I don't enjoy the Cascade where it's used and constructed competitively, where you always know the good cards you're going to get. I like my random Cascade. So this deck, I never know what I'm going to hit. Whenever I cast it, it's exciting. I could hit 2 ramp spells and be sad. I could just go off and no one's going to see that coming. Which also means powerfully, like, it can be deceptive. People know the reputation of your deck. This is probably this is one of my most powerful decks. It gets to kill on turn 6 on average, I'd say. People know the reputation of your deck. They interact with your early ramp. It can kill you. But if they don't, you gotta just smash face. And it is always important in Commander, obviously, to make sure you're balanced against the other people you're playing. But people tend to know the reputation of this deck by now. Or I only bring it if I think it's a powerful pod. So it just lets me play big things. It lets me ramp. And also, one of the best, like, it's just, you always have something to do. A lot of commanders, you kill it, you're sad. This, you kill it, okay. Cast it 10 mana. Let's keep playing. But it has one key problem, Maelstrom Wanderer. It's great if they kill it, you got to keep casting it. But if they just leave the 7 power alive, you don't get a great Cascade, you use all your resources on ramp, maybe you have one other threat to follow up with, most Maelstrom decks run out of things to do. But my deck has a companion, Keruga. Keruga means I cannot have anything in my deck that costs 0, 1, or 2 mana. This means, I love to say every game, no solving allowed. But what it does mean is when it enters the battlefield, for each thing you control that costs 3 or more mana, which is basically everything in your deck, you get to draw a card. A lot of the ramp in my deck is permanent based to kind of accommodate for this. There's still a lot of land based ramp because it's pretty good. But that means this can draw 10 cards when you play it. And this solves Maelstrom Wanderer's main issue. That you can just, if you have a kind of mediocre Cascade, you just kind of fizzle. This means you are always having something to do. The downside is you are a turn slower. If you're playing like this isn't CDH, I don't know if you can CDH Maelstrom, but if you're playing a fully optimized cast this as early as you want, you can get this turn 3 pretty consistently, turn 4. One of those two. This is turn 5 on average, which is, I think, is 1 turn later in exchange for having a lot more resilience. So I think that's worth it. And for the first section, we get to play quite a few cards that kind of cheat this rule. The first of which is Kellen, Inquisitive Prodigy. Ignore this is basically irrelevant. It's 4 mana, but for 2 mana, we can investigate whatever, get a card maybe, but you can play an additional land this turn. What we're really looking for is any cards that let us get this out as soon as possible. And this is one of them, because this means before turn 3, we can still use our mana. Now, the other mode is fine. We can actually destroy artifacts. This deck doesn't have a lot of removal as well, because anything that is just destroy a creature is like basically a wasted Cascade. We need all of our interaction to come on things that are going to kill our opponents. And 3-4 isn't doing that in a rush, but it can still kill stuff. So it is a nice little flexible piece of our deck. Oops, getting ahead of ourselves. And again, so you'll see this is something I've done on a few of my cards. If it's Japanese, because I have quite a few of these, I've now got the English text here, just so I can read it. I didn't do this for the longest time. It barely adds any thickness. We're not playing competitive, so I think it's overall pretty good. I can't remember this card's name, though. Ironically, what is it? Kolvori, I think it is, yeah. So basically, this side is a bonus. What we really want is this side. Again, it's 2 mana. We choose a creature type, and then this taps for green for a creature type or a legendary creature. So we don't need to choose Elemental. We don't need to choose Hippo. So generally you just look at your hand and whatever you have. I'll often choose like Elemental, or it's basically whatever you have in your hand that this wants to cast, because it's always going to hit legendaries, and this deck's about half legendaries, I'd say, on creature count. So just having a turn 2 ramp. And then on the flip side, I say you ignore it, but it's actually a pretty good cascade target, because if you have 3 or more legendaries, +4/+2 in vigilance, well, we've got 3 right here that we know we're going to have access to every game. The vigilance is actually quite good, because I've lost quite a few games when I was early building this deck, where I just didn't have the way to stop people attacking me back. Vigilance is a good way to prevent that. And then we can look at the top 6 for a legendary creature, which is pretty consistent in this deck. And that means, again, we get some extra resilience. We're looking for cards in this deck that do multiple things. This is definitely one that fits that goal. Now, this one only does one thing, but it does it very well. Suspend 3, 2. So I have sorted the cards in this video into sections based on what they're doing for me. As you can see, we've got all the things that are cheating on mana early, essentially. So suspend 3 for 2 mana. This means on turn 5, this will be ready to give us that mana boost, and that will mean we're basically guaranteed to cast this, or extra things as well. It adds red for each card in target opponent's hand, and then we suspend it again. So it has occasionally come up where we get to draw, like, get to turn 8, get another 3, or you can just cast it. If you're cascading, you cascade into this, you can play like a big thing from your hand. As long as you leave 2 mana up for Karuga, 6 of it can go into there. You've got options, but it's got the suspend. We can play it for 2 mana. That's what we're really looking for this card, and the next one as well. Not played in many decks, not super great, but it's suspend 3 for 2 mana again, so it means we can use our mana before we can normally use it. Exile the top 3 cards of your library, find a land, put it into play, and we can repeat that again. So this is going to ramp us for turn 5. If we're just a little bit off, we know we've got one coming. It's a tap land, that's unfortunate, but you know, it's a great effect. Search for Tomorrow. Again, suspend for 1 mana, so we can do this on turn 1. And then we just search for a land and put it into play tapped. And in the same vein, Rift Sower, the same thing but on a creature. This just means we're going to cheat stuff into play, and that's fantastic. We get to cheat on our mana that Karuga gives us. Because a lot of the Karuga decks in, like, you know, Pioneer or Modern are looking to cheat in this kind of way. And we can do that in Commander too. Now we get on to the actual ramp cards. These things are all going to be 3 mana or more, and what we're looking for is just the most efficient ramp possible. Like, for example, I don't play Cultivate anymore, because that gets a land into play and 1 into your hand, but that's not ramping us fast enough. This, however, is going to give us a basic land card, and we're going to be able to create a 0/1 colorless spawn token. Often not that useful, but it means for 3 mana, we get 2 mana back for next turn. All we're looking is to just ramp as fast as possible, because once we hit this, it's going to pay for the ramp. It's going to pay for that ramp. This is the kind of effect we need, and I do have tokens I've custom made for this deck. I'll just briefly go here, so you know, look, there we go. Lovely spawn token. Next up, Selvala. So this is one of the only exceptions to that rule I just said. This thing by itself only ramps for 1. If we cast this on turn 3, it's only tapping for 1 extra mana because it's got 2 there. But if you're ever cascading, you always make sure if you're leaving up any mana, leave a green up just in case you hit this, because you cast Maelstrom Wanderer, you hit Selvala, this gains haste off Maelstrom. That's 7 mana, so it basically makes it free. So Selvala, just because of that interaction alone, it can just ramp for nuts amounts in this deck and really let you have an explosive turn. And it's going to make your opponent draw some cards, and then maybe you. Gwenna. Now this can really go off. So 3 mana, taps for 2 creature mana. That's the main thing we're looking to do. We have a lot of non-creatures, but the best thing is when you cast a thing with 5 or greater, you untap it. So if we're casting Maelstrom, we cast this, we have 2 mana available. We then cascade. Let's say we hit, you know, it's a Karuga. It's not in our deck, but then we get to untap this again while it's on the stack. Then we'd have this untapped, 2 mana floating. Maybe we can cast something else. And then this is a 4/5 by then. So this just does everything we want to do. People don't interact with ramp a lot when I'm playing, and thank God. This is the kind of card where if anyone has anything that can ding it, it could set you back a lot. But 3 mana for 3 cards, 3 mana for 3 mana, there isn't a better rate than this. So we risk it. 1 Power Stone. So again, I like permanent base ramp in this deck. Karuga loves it. I haven't actually got this one translated, but it's very simple. Just taps for 2 mana, enters tapped. It means that it's going to draw a card off Karuga. It's ramping for 2. I find artifacts are less interactive with creatures, so you know this is still it's on the point of curve. 3 mana gets us where we want to go. City of Death. This is a unique one. We don't care if the ramp is temporary like this, as long as it gets the job. done. So this makes a treasure, and then it copies like any token for the next 5 turns. As we're looking currently, we have a clue token we could choose to copy, and a Eldrazi spawn token. So mostly you're going to be copying that treasure. And that means if you play this on turn 3, for turn 5, it's going to have 3 mana off this 1 card. So that's a very good rate if we save them. Or we can use them for further ramp spells. Descent into Avernus. This is like temporary to the extreme. Beginning of your upkeep, you get 2 treasures. In the next upkeep, you get 4, so that's 6. This is going to cast Maelstrom Wanderer by itself, which is like a massive relief for your hand. This is a deck that wants to aggressive mulligan a lot. I've gone down to 4 and been happy before, 3 and accepted it. Like 2 lands and this is better than a hand of like any combination of lands and no ramp spells, or even 1 ramp spell. This beats that. Because your opponent's the treasures as well, but you get to use the treasures first, so often that won't matter, and it does damage as well. We want to kill people, so the damage is very helpful. Coalition Relic. So this is like a bit of an old commander card that isn't seen very much anymore, but it does what this deck wants to do. It can tap for a mana immediately, or it can store a mana and tap for 2 in 1 turn. A lot of decks have moved past this because 3 mana rocks aren't where a lot of decks want to be, but the fact it taps for 2 for Maelstrom Wanderer. This deck is built around, we want to make sure we get this out as soon as possible. Relic helps with that. Overgrowth. Again, 3 mana, makes a land tap for 2 extra. So that's just, it's the theme. Everything here, other than Selvala, is 3 mana and it's tapping for 2. So if we're looking at the curve on that, turn 3, we play this, next turn we have access to 6 mana. We play another ramp spell, turn 5, we're fairly consistent to hit the Maelstrom because everything ramps for 2 basically. Glittering Stockpile. So this is one of the more different ones. Again, it's very permanent. Only taps for red, requires red, but you put a stash counter on it, and then you can sacrifice it to get that much mana. So you're going to get at least 1 the turn you play it, 2. So it's only going to tap for 2. Like this is one of the ones that is probably one of the first ones that be replaced, but it does fill the role of tapping for 2, and that's what really matters. It can go insane if you get to tap it a few times and then get a big turn off it, but it's just about filling our role there. Now on to 4 mana, so I've only got so much space. I'm gonna put these away. Skyshroud Claim, search for 2 lands. It's 4 mana again, but these can enter untapped, so it's not unreasonable to be able to play this and then like play a 3 mana card afterwards. And we do have the Surveil lands in this deck now, so this can mean if we like really need to find another land, or we really need to find a ramp spell, or we want to find a threat, this has some extra utility now, so that's nice. Fran Dynamo, tap 4 mana, taps for 3 mana. You play this on turn 4, you're going to have the land. If you have just a land, you're going to have the mana for Maelstrom next turn. This is just like, it does everything by itself. Even if you don't have a ramp spell on turn 3, this is going to cast it on turn 5. That's what we're aiming for. Path of Annihilation. Now, this is even better than Fran Dynamo in that sense. It gives you 2 spawn tokens, and then they can both tap for mana and sack. So this thing can give us 4 mana for 4, which is like the best rate there is. And then when you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, you gain 4 life. This deck can take some real beatings early, and this is going to mean, hey, I get to gain 4 life off this, and then probably 4 to 8 life off whatever I cascade into. Potentially, like, 8 life is probably average. So 4 mana and 8, that's one of the newest cards in the deck, and it's like, I haven't cast it yet, but I have no doubts it's just what the deck wants. Even if, you know, they kill the spawns, that's unfortunate. That life gain's going to come in handy. Peer's Whim. So, this is one of the few pieces of early interaction we have. We're going to choose Friend for ourselves. We search for a land card. We have both Temple of the False Gods and Ancient Tomb in this deck, spoilers. So this is going to ramp for 2. That's critical. If these lands, if you're playing like this deck on a budget, and you don't have those, like even then, Temple of the False Gods is still going to get the job done. You might not want to play it. But the fact that it can definitely search for a 2 mana ramp makes it great. And then each of our players is going to sacrifice an artifact to enchantment, mostly a treasure token now. But it's a bit of interaction when we don't normally get any. We can also search, if we don't need the mana, we've got quite a few good utility lands that this can search for as well, or just mana, command tower, great. Gilded Lotus, 5 mana searches for free. So again, this is the same thing as Fran Dynamo. On turn 3, we're going to be playing something that ramps for 2. That means even if we play a tap land, we're going to be able to play Gilded Lotus is the general plan. Inga and Essica. So I'm just going to look at the next card. Yeah, we moved on to a new section now. This is all what I would call just ramp. Some of this obviously has a little bit of utility, like, you know, this can hit. But for the most part, these are things that just ramp. Now we're getting into things which is one of the most important slots in the deck, which is Flexible Ramp. This is a card that both, like, ramps us and gives us something else that we want, mostly killing our opponent. But in this case, creatures you control have Vigilance is so useful. We get to attack with our army and know we have full defense up, or we can tap a bunch of mana to draw a card and play another thing in our main phase too. This just gets to kill people, protects us, and ramps us. It's the kind of thing we want to do, and this has seriously impressed me. Let's leave them there, shall we? Let's have the big slot in the middle for what we're talking about. Emoti, a card I haven't translated, but I know it off by heart. Cascade. So it's 5 mana. It's going to find us one of these ramp spells. The only miss it has is this, because I don't think you can choose what side to cast it on. No, you can for Cascade, actually. I'm wrong. As long as they're both cheaper, and the other side's 2 mana, so I'm wrong for that. That hasn't actually come up yet. But you're definitely going to hit a ramp spell, because everything in this set that this is under 4 mana is a ramp spell on purpose, for things like this. And then when you cast something with 6 or more mana, that has Cascade. So, Maelstrom has triple Cascade. If that hits something that has 6 or more, that's going to gain Cascade. So potentially, if you have Emoti out and you cast this, you can cast like 6 spells just off this. So Emoti ramps us, and it's nuts. Cursed Mirror. So again, this only ramps for 1, but it has the flexibility when it comes down, you can have it enter as a threat. So often I've just had this copy Karuga, and just draw like 5 cards for my 3 mana rock. Great. You can also just copy something to attack with. If your opponent's got like a Solemn, that's going to be better than the mana rock. And then it taps for a red. So in a pinch, turn 3, it's a mana rock. That's fine. Does the job. And often someone will have something for you to copy. Beanstalk Giant. So here we get, like, this is where we're delving to make this kind of thing work. What we want to have as much hits as possible in a Maelstrom deck. 3 mana, such as for 1 land. That's not great. That's not the rate we're looking for. But it does enter on tap, so maybe we can play something else if we play on like turn 4 instead of 3. But if we cascade into it, its power is equal to the number of lands we have, which is going to be at least 6 by the time Maelstrom hits most of the time, potentially more late game. So if we cascade, draw it early, it ramps for okay. If we cascade it, it cascades okay. Doesn't do either of them great, but the fact it does both of them, it earned its slot. Seedy's Artistry. It's a weird one to see in the ramp slot. But this is kind of thing where, you know, if we're looking to ramp early, we can cast this turn 4, because we cast something like Overgrowth, we have 6 mana. Coalition Relic, we have 6 mana. Doing on City of Death would be a bit unfortunate, but we maybe copy someone else's artifact, and then we could copy it with that. So I've said that's unfortunate, that's actually a 6 energy. But this is basically always going to be able to find at least one thing to ramp of ours, probably, or maybe our opponents. If someone else has just played, like, you know, their Arcane Signet, we can have an Arcane Signet. But then, once we've already got Maelstrom out, or if we're cascading off it, we're just going to copy the 2 best things on the board. That might be a ramp spell, that might be something else. This gets to perform, like, I love this card. It doesn't get to fit in many decks, but it really fills its role here well. Creative Technique. Demonstrate. That means someone else is going to cast the top, do this first, which means you're going to shuffle your deck, reveal cards until you hit a non-land, and you can cast it. So that means this is like, because we've got about like half ramp, half threats, if we're hitting 2, it's going to ramp. So it's in the 5 mana, it's going to ramp slot. Might not always, but then we'll get 2 big threats, and that's probably pretty good anyway. Our opponent's going to get a random card first, but that's fine. It's fun as well, letting someone have a free card. Just as important as making a deck that wins the game is having a fun deck, and I think this really does help with that. But we could hit 2 ramp spells, we could hit 2 regular things, and anything that casts multiple spells as well is so good. We want to cast Maelstrom, hit this, cast 2 more spells, maybe this, cast something that casts 2 spells, and then I need a drink, because that was a lot of talking. Lovely. So yeah, this just gets to do 2 of anything. Good stuff. Gorklaw. Creature spells of power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. So this is now 6 mana. When it attacks, creatures of power 4 or greater get +1/+1 and trample. I don't have a lot of trample in this deck. That's like a deck building decision. Like, for example, Pathbreaker Ibex is one of the best cards for this deck. But I just don't enjoy overrun effects, because when I started playing the game, my first friend kept beating me with that overrun L strategy, and it really annoyed me, so I've hated the cards ever since. I've only just put Crater Hoof in 1 commander deck, and even then I kind of still want to play 6. I don't love it. It's more just to end the game for other people quickly when I've already got a big advantage, you know. But Pathbreaker in this case can turn a reasonable advantage into a win. I'm not looking to do that. So this is a little bit of trample and also fits in the ramp category. So again, as much as important it is to make a strong deck, it has to be a deck I want to play. So this fits the role that Pathbreaker doesn't. New card, Roxanne Starfall Savant. So when it enters, you get a meteorite token. I've got a little, you know, this is like an emotional meteorite, shall we say. This is going to tap for 1 mana of any color. This is going to make, when you tap an artifact token for mana, tap 2. So this is 5 mana, and it's coming with something that taps for 2. That's pretty good. That's going to deal 2 damage, so we get some interaction stapled onto our effect. And when it attacks, we do it again. So if we just cast it on turn 5, we're getting 2 ramp. And we're getting to deal 2 damage to something. That's fine. Even if they kill this, we've got 1 ramp. this is the card that fits in both slots. But if we cascade into it, we get a meteorite, deal 2 to something. We attack, the meteorite's made, deal 2 to something, swinging for 4. So it's a ramp card that can deal 8 damage when it's played. That's pretty good. Cavalier of Thorns. When it enters, look at the top 5 cards of your library for a land, put it into play. 5/6. It can hit people, reach, can be relevant for defense, but it's 5 mana, which is the slot where we want to get some hits in if we cascade into it, but also ramp us if we're on the curve. This really helps with that. And if it dies, it's one of the only ways to get something back from our graveyard, which that does definitely come in. Trumpeting Carnosaur. So as you may see, it has Discover 5. Almost everything in our deck that costs less than 5 ramps us. So even though it's a 6 mana card that doesn't really look like a ramp spell, it is a ramp spell. And you can discard it to bolt something. I've never done that, but it does come up. So not everything's going to be a hit, as we will see, but there's so many hits, this is basically just a ramp spell. And when we cascade into it, 7/6 trample gets the job done. Arix Nethes. Enters with 5 counters on it. Tapped. Taps for 2 mana, because it becomes a land. Cool. 4 mana, taps for 2. Pardon me. That's all we want. When we cast a spell, we can remove a slumber counter, which, if we cast this and cascade into 2 things and play a ramp spell after it, it's 1 counter away. And then it can start swinging for 12. So ramp, late game, is a 12/12. No trample or anything, but 12/12 if people don't have blockers all the time. Savala Stampede. So, is this in the ramp section still? I don't think it is. No, this is the last card of no. Start again. This is the first card that is just what the payoffs are. These are the things we want to cascade into that are going to win the game if we hit them. You get to vote for wild or free. Most of the time you're going to vote wild, they're going to vote free 3 times, which basically means you're going to reveal until you hit a creature, spoilers, and put it into play. That's great. 6 mana, you get a random creature. Most of our creatures are gas. There is some amount of ramp, but ramp's still good if you give it haste. And then you got to put things into play from your hand. Sometimes people, if I've got a stacked hand, they might not want to do that because random's better. You'll often have a bomb or 2 in your hand that you can just play. Even if this is play 1 random, play 1 from your hand, that's worth the mana cost, and sometimes it's so much more. Especially with Karuga. Nice little synergy there. Ilhag. So this is coming into, let's put these back on the view, shall we? Ilhag, we're going to talk about what makes Maelstrom great, what particular cards we're looking for. So if things with powerful ETBs are good in any deck, but particularly because this gives our creatures haste, things like Ilhag, you play it normally, wait a turn, if it's alive, you get a trigger. It's a little slow. With haste, all the time, you're very rarely going to have this without haste, you get the trigger instantly. So it's 6 damage, trample, you put something else into a play attacking. That's playing multiple cards for 5 mana. That's what we're looking to do. Body of Mind. You see this? This is its power and toughness. It's just I did this once. Had a very quick game. Cascade into this. Got this at like 60/60. Also had Selvala. That was just game over. So this card I don't know how it, because I want to play a deck that wins, but I want to make sure it's kind of fair. This, if no one has a blocker, they just die. This is going to kill someone in Commander. It was fun the one time I did it. We'll see if it makes the journey. Annoyed Altasaur. It's one of the first other times we're seeing Cascade in the main deck. See, Cascade isn't superb in this deck because we mostly want to just be hitting the big things and have them be impactful. Things that are like 6 mana, 5 mana, they fit into the ramp slot, but this just kind of does the job. It has Cascade, it's got a reasonable body, it's probably going to hit something else nice. And this is the other Cascade card we've got. So, it's got Flash, very rarely comes in. Cascade, so it actually counts as a ramp spell as well, really, because we're most likely to hit one. And it enters the battlefield as a copy of any permanent. So, if we cascade in something good, we can copy it. If not, just your land drop for the turn. And occasionally, you could even just, wait for your opponent's turn. Maybe they'll play something good. The Flash does come in. But this can be a little awkward if we hit it off the Maelstrom, because we might not have even, we might have just played a land that turn so far if we don't hit anything off the Cascade. A little unfortunate, but I took it out for a while, but I put it back in. It's been reasonably good. Titan of Industry. So this is one of our interaction pieces. 7 mana, can destroy an artifact or enchantment. If someone's got an ensnaring bridge, we don't have a ton of ways to deal with that, so this is something. We gain 5 life, we can get a 4th, we get a shield counter. Most often we're going to destroy something and either get a 4/4 if we want to get more damage in, or get a shield counter, but 5 life can be relevant. It's a lot of power for what it does and a lot of flexibility. Talking of a lot of power, Dracocept. It's not flexible, it's doing exactly one thing. Again, it has an attack trigger, so if you need to wait, not that great. When it's got haste, it can deal 7 damage and 4, 11, and then 3 to 2 things. So you can just destroy a bunch of problematic things with that. Not much more to say. It's a great aggressive threat. Thunderfoot Bayoff, one of the other trample sources I have, because again, it's trample, but it's not infinite trample like Apex. If you have your commander out, which you will, this gets +2/+2 in trample, and so does your team. So your team just gets to hit very hard. Your power becomes very threatening. Balefire Dragon. Again, we need interaction. When it does combat damage to a player, that's a lot quicker with haste. You gotta just deal 6 damage to someone's board, or potentially more. Yeah, we need our interaction in this deck, even though it's just coming in different shapes. This is our creature removal spell. This is our Swords to Plowshares. It's just a bit of a different way of deck building. Genesis Storm. Now this, again, is something that's going to cast multiple spells at once. The first time we cast our commander, this is going to be 2, because it's going to have the first, and then it's going to copy itself. So we're going to search for 2 things to cast. That's pretty good. If it starts multiple times, it can get real silly, but it's just casting more other stuff. Hullbreaker Horror. This is one that definitely earns groans. It has flash, rarely comes in, but we cascade into it, and every spell we cast, which can be quite a lot, we get to bounce something. We don't have a lot of instants in our deck, so we're not returning many spells, but there are 1 or 2. It has come up. But mostly we're just getting rid of blockers. And it's a big body to do that with. Zara Renegade Recruiter, the best friend of Ilharg. So this is like, it's smaller. It has flying, which can be relevant. And it's going to put one of our opponent's creatures into play. This is worse than Ilharg generally, because our creatures tend to be better than our opponents because we're building a big creature deck. But I enjoy the randomness. That's why we're playing this. So I don't know what I'm going to get. I just enjoy seeing it. And people aren't going to block their own card unless they can do it easily. Tyrant of Discord. Okay, this is a pet card. It's a bit silly. It is interaction in the weirdest way. It's a 7/7. You destroy things your opponents control randomly until you hit a land. It's just a bit silly. I just really like it, and that's why it's in the deck. That's all we really need, just to enjoy ourselves. It's not, there's better targets than this, but it's a fun one. It's still a 7/7, so it's still going to hit people hard. Talking of better targets, Morag, Fury of Akum. Each creature gets +1 for each time it's attacked this turn, so just a little bit extra power. When we play a land, so we've got kind of a dichotomy here. You want to be able to often save your land when you're cascading, just in case you hit something like Morag. But then on the other side of the equation, if we hit like an Overgrowth and we've got no land for it untapped, that can, like, you know, by this. But this tends to be a better one to go for. Main phase 2, we play a land. Make sure you don't put it in main phase 1. How this works, if you cascade into this and then like a ramp spell that gets you land, you will untap your creatures at the start of like the set. You'll get an extra It's your main phase of this. Yeah, so you get the extra combat step before your main combat step. At the beginning of that combat, you untap all your creatures. So unless you have vigilance, you attack, you get the extra combat, nothing can actually attack. So main phase 2, you want to play your land, untap, and then you don't get an additional main phase after that. So you can't get multiple extra combat steps, but you can get 1 extra combat step, and those are super powerful. I don't have any other extra combat steps in this deck. Well, they are strong because this comes with a 6/6 creature. It needs to do multiple things. Kogla, interaction. When it enters, it fights something and kills it. When it attacks, you destroy an artifact or enchantment. This is just interaction all over. And we can return a human to give this indestructible. We don't have a ton of humans. Like, I'm just thinking if I remember what we've got. I think Somberwald Sage, is that a human? Yeah, human, that's an elf, that's an elf. So, yeah, we've got a lot of elves. We have 2 humans that we've seen so far. So that's rarely going to come up, but it could do. But mainly it's a 7 power of interaction. That's what we're looking for. It's hardly busted. I've never flipped this. I don't want to flip this. I don't enjoy the flip side. But this is just like, I don't want to say better Maelstrom Wanderer, but it's certainly the updated Maelstrom Wanderer. It's an ETB, so you don't get it on cast. But that means you can copy it with things like Curse Mirror. When I've copied this with Curse Mirror, that's just like game over. You just get 4 spells. It's great. I was pondering building an Atali deck at some point, but I think I'm just happier to have it nestled into here, because the decks would play very similarly. But yeah, flip side, I'm not even going to talk about it because I just don't care about it. Other Atali. This flip side of this does have the text on it, but this is like the slightly slower Atali, because when you attack, you get to cast a top spell of each person's deck, but you can't cast lands. But hey, look, it's got haste, so it's going to do that immediately. So this can be better than the other Atali in you know, a reasonable amount of games, but mostly it's worse. But I do love this serial one, and they're both fantastic because they can both cast a ton of spells, even if the spells of this can attack, the ones of this can't, so that probably is the deciding factor. Cavalier of Gales. Now, one thing Cascade decks are known for doing is brainstorming. You just say, oh, I've got these cards in hand, let's put a tally on top. That's very good. So I only have one of those in this deck because most of the brainstorm effects aren't like something you want to cascade into. Because I see a lot of Maelstrom decks playing brainstorm, just the card. But if you cascade into that, it makes your next cascade better, but I'd rather just have 2 random ones than one definitely good one and one terrible one. But this is a 5/5 flyer. 5/5 flyer hits people, hits them reasonably hard, and it comes with a brainstorm. So I'm happy with it, just, you know, it does both. And if it dies, you can scry too. Cool. Baylor. Yeah, so this is one of those ones where, again, it has an attack trigger, so we get to play it. When it attacks or dies, choose one or more, each on a different player. Someone destroys 3 and discards 3 at random. That'll, you know, could help a graveyard deck, but could just screw people with you. Or if you've got a lot of lands in your hand, take the chance. Target opponent activates a non-token artifact. No treasure tokens here. Actually a pretty good effect. And it deals damage to target opponent, and it deals damage equal to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. So that's pretty good. That's like, this can easily be swinging for like 10. People have 5 cards in hand, which is pretty good. And then also interact all around. Like, you're never gonna, you can target yourself with the first ability sometimes, but mostly you'll just be targeting your opponents, and that's a pretty good selection of abilities. And it's 5 mana, so it's easier to just like cast. It is worth bearing in mind that we have, with this thing, we do want things that we can just cast off red mana. You know, it's a good one for that. Old Gnawbone. Flying. When you deal combat damage to a player, get that many treasure tokens. This makes like 30 treasures quite easily. And then it's, you know, do you just play yourself out, or do you hold it a turn? It's hard to say. But it's not hard to say that this is a very good card that has earned groans and the game's over. So yeah, that's what we're doing. Auton Soldier. So sadly, a lot of the Doctor Who cards aren't quite good enough for this deck. This one might not even be, but I do think if there's anything good to copy, it's nuts. You get a copy of it, and then it gains haste, so you immediately myriad, and you get 2 more copies of it if you're playing a 4-player game. This could just go off crazily. Again, I've yet to actually cast this one. It's just not come up on my cascades. But even if you like, you know, again, this can act as ramp. If you get a Cavalier of Thorns, you just go, oh, I'll copy that. Cool. It's flexible. I do like having the one of the most powerful clones ever made. Great Whale. When it enters untap 7 lands, so it's a 7 mana 5/5, doesn't do a lot. But when we cast Maelstrom, we'll often have something really spicy in our hand that we'd like to cast as well. So if we hit this off it, we can untap all our lands and then get to doing that. So it doesn't look the most impressive on itself. Palanquin is definitely better. Flying is helpful, but this I own. Palanquin is a lot more expensive, so this just is in that slot. Sphinx Ambassador, I love this card. It is silly. And I'm glad I got the translation for it now. I didn't for a long time. When it deals combat damage to a player, so again, our hasty attack trigger. We look through their deck and exile a card face down. They guess that card, and the number of people will just name something not in their deck because they just don't know what's in their deck. I enjoy that. That's my energy. If they name the name card, we put it back, nothing happens. They've won the game. If not, we get to cast it for free. So we just look for our deck and basically get like our opponent's 3rd best creature and cast it for free. Maybe if you're feeling spicy, you go for more. I like those little mind games. Inferno Titan. The Titans are, I know they're here, both in this deck. Because they're not played a lot in Commander anymore, but because you get to enter and then immediately attack, they do quite a lot. They hit for 6, that's a good amount of damage to be getting in for. Get rid of 2 blockers, deal 6 to anything, get rid of some problematic threats, or this can just hit for 12. They've got an attack trigger and an enter trigger, which is just kind of what we want to do. And it's some nice nostalgia, to be honest. I remember playing these back when I started. Genesis Ultimatum, one of the best cards in the deck. Exiles when it resolves, oh no. But you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck for any number of permanents into play. So our deck is mostly permanents. We do have some spells for ramp and such. But it can, like, if you just hit 4 bombs off this sometimes and just win the game on the spot. Not much to say about it. It just, you hit it off Cascade as well because it's 7. Brooding Cragworm is this? I can't actually remember the name. But at least I know what it does. Backup 3. Often put it on itself, but you can do on other things. And then it gets double of the ability that turn. When it attacks, look at the top X cards of your library, put a permanent into play that costs less. if you put this on a Maelstrom, you can get anything for 10. If you put it on this, you're just hitting 2 7s. It's basically, that is anything. I'm lying. You just got to put 2 things into play with attacks. They can't attack, but it just gets you so much value that it's playing multiple cards. Beguiler of Will. So this is one of the few cards that I've seen basically no one else cast. Doesn't fit the theme of the deck very well, because it's just a 5-mana 1/1. But with haste, it gets a lot better. Just gain control of something. You'll often have quite a few creatures. Just gain control of stuff for a tap. You can get rid of something small that's blocking. You can get rid of something big. This has just actually impressed me. Like, because it has haste most of the time. Even if it dies, because it's 1/1, you've already taken control of something. So it's just, it's a unique one, and I like it. Avenger of Zendikar. Yeah, this can just do it, because we can have a lot of landfall triggers coming off our cascades. Get a lot of plants, give them haste, get in. What more do you want to do? This card, everyone knows Avenger of Zendikar, and it is, you know, a bit outdated in some decks now, but definitely at home in this one. And Turntimber Symbiosis. So we've actually hit the last spell in the deck. This lets you look at the top 7 for a creature, put it into play. That's reasonably likely you're going to hit a good ramp spell, but the main reason this is in here is because it's also a land. This just lets us ever so slightly make our land drops able to cascade a little bit better, because this is still going to likely be a good hit. But that's everything we're looking to play, but that doesn't mean we're hit the end of the things we need to talk about, because as well as the fast mana here, we have other ways of generating mana cheekily to get around this restriction. Temple of the False Gods is not one of them, but this is a controversial card that a lot of people don't want to play anymore, and I agree. I play this in, I think this is the only deck I play this in, but it is very good in this, because sometimes you're just a little bit off, you're 1 mana off. Temple of the False Gods gets you 2 mana for 1 land drop, and that just cannot be understated, the value of getting to cast Maelstrom a turn earlier. There are times when you'll just be playing it, but this deck has so many mana sources between just like higher land count than I think most of my other decks, lots of ramp. It's quite likely this is just going to be a 2 mana land, and that just does what you need it to. You know what's an actual 2 mana land? Ancient Tomb. Just taps for 2 and you take 2 damage. This is obviously one of the more busted ways to start the game. You just get to start a turn earlier. You don't need to play the cheap Cascade cards. You can just go turn 2 Beanstalk Giant and such off it. So this deck can hit turn 4 Maelstrom Wanderer with some of the, just some combination of these cards. But this just basically means you're guaranteed it. And I think I did a turn 3 once. Don't quote me on that, I can't remember. But something else which does the same thing is not Castle Gowanbrook. What was I expected to talk about? Gemstone Caverns. So if you're not going first, which is very likely in Commander, you just get to exile a card from your hand, and this just enters. So again, you can play this, and that basically means you're a turn ahead on your lands. You get to start ramping on turn 2. You're going to hit Maelstrom a turn earlier. These are both very expensive, and I spent a long time until I got this. When I decided this was my favorite deck, then I got these, but it was waiting until then. But they do pull their weight, definitely. Castle Gowanbrook, now it's time. This is, again, you tap 4 mana, you get 6 creature mana. As long as you've got a red and a blue floating, this just gets you potentially a turn earlier. It builds the same role as like Temple of the False Gods, where it can just eke you into the extra mana you need for that Maelstrom Wanderer. And then, you know, there's a bit less to say about the rest of the lands, so I'm just going to pick these up so I can kind of see where the lines go. So basics. I've got some nice little basics here. I like these stickers. B-side label in Japan, highly recommend, and also the Tokyo lands. I've got 7 basics in this deck. So we've got a few things that search for basics. We do have Myriad Landscape, which is the main reason to have 2 of each of these. So if we want to fetch blue or red, we can, unless we've already drawn one, find 2 of them. This is just an extra consistency way. Tap lands are better in this deck because even though we've got ways to use our mana early, we don't have a ton of them because there aren't a ton in existence. This just means tap lands get a little better because it's a lot easier. And this is just a little bit of extra consistency that we're going to find an extra ramp. And just like Blighted Woodland, it's just a little bit of extra consistency for that ramp. Just in case if we have a bunch of bombs, we can still have these are bad ramp spells, but they do ramp. Yeah, so we have 7 basics. I have an extra forest just because, again, we need forest more because like the Skyshroud Claim and stuff like that. But 7 basics it's felt like the right number for everything else going on. And I do love the arts on all of them. You know, just these B-side label ones. It's my friend gave me the idea of sticking lands on cards. It is just lands on cards, stickers on cards. And on basic lands that are basically worth nothing, it is just pretty nice to just get, you know, a bit more customization. you know, people have custom arts all the time. Secret layers, it's no difference. And stickers, they cost a lot less. So I have a few of those across all my different decks, but one of each in this deck, so I've got the secret layer lands as well. So next up, we have some fetch lands. Not all of them, not all of one colour, because I don't have a spare Shivan Reef, it's in a different deck. Shivan Reef, Starting Time. And I don't have a full 7, just because they're in use elsewhere. Having all the fetch lands is probably great, but when you have 12 commander decks, even if this is my favourite, there is still only so many we can justify playing. And, you know, I think deck thinning is a bit of a fallacy in Commander, but if you're playing 7 of them, we really want to hit our land drops, and it does slightly reduce those odds. If we played 3 fetch lands, because that's our draw, that is a tangible difference, maybe, I don't know. It definitely feels like it. So fetch lands are good, because they can fetch a Triumph, Royal lands, or I have just once, I have 2, I lied, 2 Surveyor lands in this deck. Surveyor lands, obviously the new lands on the block. They're Scry, they're tap lands, which is less of a problem with us. And just they can draw us into a bit of ramp if we need it, or we can do it before a Cascade and just see if we're going to hit something bad. We get a little bit extra consistency there potentially. Then we have a full set of shock lands. I don't have any of the original duels because even though it's my favourite deck, I don't have the money for blue dual lands. Don't be crazy. I do have 2 dual lands in other decks, but I bought those before what they are now. Yeah, this is what I've got. I don't translate my lands because they're much simpler, but they all happen to not be in English, in different languages. That's not even intentional. That's just how I happen to get them. But yeah, shock lands are good. We can search more Skyshred Flame, we can search more fetch lands. They enter untapped when we want them to. Everyone loves a good shock land. And just like that, everyone loves a good 3-colour land. We've got 3 of these. So Command Tower. It's Command Tower. It's great. Exotic Orchid won't always hit, but often enough it will. And Path of Ancestry. Just gonna do what we want. It's a tap land, doesn't matter as much there. The Scry is nice for Maelstrom Wanderer. Bear in mind, Karuga is not your commander, so you won't be scrying off that. But we do have a few other elementals as well, so this can hit multiple things. And just being a tap land that taps for 3 mana is, you know, it does the job with the Scry. And it's got Doctor Who art, which I can never, you know, not understate the value of. Just like these 3. Doctor Who lands, tap for 2 colours. If you have 2 or more other untapped lands, they enter untapped. And since most of the time we can't use our mana before turn 3, even though we have the cards, it's not that frequent. They're basically just 3 untapped lands. So they're very nice. What are 3 untapped lands are the ones that just enter if you have 2 or more opponents. So I do play 1-on-1 very occasionally, and these are like, oh, I didn't take these out of my deck, whoops. But obviously these are just some of the best lands in Commander. Just have the full set of those. And then we're on to, okay, I'll put these in the order slightly. 1 Rootbound Crag. I don't have the full set of these. This is a Doctor Who one, which always helps. We do want extra green. Possibly I should have a green blue one instead. But I guess I just got the Doctor Who thing, 'cause it says Hello Sweetie on it. And it taps for green. As long as it taps for green, these kind of things are okay. Like, again, this one's green-blue. We don't often need the extra card off this. The life game might matter, but it's Doctor Who. There's some amount of just, I want to play Doctor Who cards, because I love Doctor Who. Then we get to the final 4 cards in the deck, which are utility lands. So, I have Otawara. I don't have Beseiju, which is possibly what this Rootbound Crag should be, but I don't have one spare. It's just in my Pioneer deck, and I don't like to swap cards too often, but I do have spare Otawaras. It's one of the few ways we have to like be able to have a land that also just can interact with stuff, which is nice. We can cast this for 1 mana quite frequently, because we have a lot of the legendaries in the deck. So I think it's any blue deck should have this, any green deck should have Beseiju, but it's just how many you have spare, you know. And I got Otawaras before they spiked, so I have quite a few of those. All my blue decks have one. I've got 2 of these, one of which I've translated and one of which I haven't for some reason. But the Hideaway lands, they're tap lands, and they're some of the strongest ones, I think. So they're real good. They both enter tapped. Look at, like, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck for a anything, and you can play it if you meet the conditions. This is if you have 10 or more power of creatures, which is very easy. This is if you've dealt 7 damage. So we're not going to be able to attack with this one, but hey, look, Maelstrom's got 7 power. These are some of my favourite cards in Commander for tap lands. A lot of the decks I play can hit these conditions fairly easily. You get a big discount on a spell. It just fits what we're trying to do, and the secret layer arts are lovely. I've got this in there just for the English. And the last card, Sanctum of Eternity. Taps for colourless. Tap it in 2 mana, return a commander you control to your hand. It's very strong. That's tricks the cascade triggers. This is often going to be the first utility land I'll search for if I have any doubts I'm going to run out of gas. Yeah, this just does what you want to do. Return to your hand only during your turn. You're not saving it, but you don't really need to save Maelstrom. This is just extra value, and we are done. Things not in the deck I've discussed a little bit. Pathbreaker, Ibex. There is one other card that lets you cheat on mana, but it's just an awful cascade target, so we're not including it. And just there's some amount of budget, like, you know, I've not got the dual lands, but this is my favourite deck. It's beautiful. I just love it. I honestly got to a point where I wasn't enjoying Commander anymore. The types of deck I was building, that I were playing, they weren't fun, they just weren't working for me. I built this, and it honestly ruined the rest of Commander for me, because for so long, I just could not enjoy a deck that wasn't this. It's because it taught me a lesson about building a coherent deck. I'd played coherent constructed decks before, but I hadn't really put that same thought to Commander, because let's be honest, constructed, most players, me included, there's a lot of net decking involved. Made a few changes, but it's a whole different world, really. So Commander, I didn't really have the same deck building skills, I feel, but after playing a lot of Limited, after working to a plan, and then building this, and having a deck that forces you to have a plan. A lot of decks you can kind of just get by. You have a cheap Commander, you have some ramp, you got some stuff. You can just kind of like, you can get through a game. You'll win some of those games. But this was really a big power level, both in terms of mindset and in terms of deck for me. You have an 8 mana Commander. If you're not getting there as quick as you can, what are you doing with your deck? So it just encouraged me to go, hey, let's have a lot of ramp spells. This deck has like 20 actual ramp spells, 10 dual ramp spells. You're looking for unique cards. Another reason I really like this deck, if we look at the main deck, how many of these cards have you seen in other decks? Like, let's just go through it quickly. This one, I've seen once. Genesis is fine. No Titans, no Sphinx, no Whales, Norbones, sure. Big Atali, yeah, not Little Atali. Hullbreaker, yes. But you look at a lot of the cards, you just don't see Selvalas, sure, Cavalier. But you just don't see a lot of these cards in other decks. So you're sitting down to a game. Skycloud Claim is good. Gwen is good. Selvala you see. None of these you do. So I'd say like maybe 10 cards in my deck you expect to see in other decks. You're going to play a lot of unique cards. Does mean people are going to be reading your cards, obviously, which is a downside if games are taking longer, but they shouldn't be if you're playing Maelstrom either. So you're just going to play a lot of really unique cards that are doing different things. And I couldn't play other decks for a while, but after like, I would say, I think it was like a year, I did find another Commander that encouraged me to build around it in such a way that it was really like flexible. Kawametra, you've probably seen that video if you're on my channel. And then I went from there. Now I have like 13 decks again that some of them aren't as powerful as others, but they've all working towards that coherent game plan. So this deck, not only was it just something I still enjoy and love, it's really done well in teaching me the game and how to play it better. So I thought to finish it off, we'd just do one sample hand with it, because we've done a lot of talking. We're already nearly at an hour, so this is definitely the longest video I'll ever make. Well, not ever. Maybe I'll do a Commander gameplay video one day. I would like to do that. I actually feel like I've just rambled for so long, but I've had a lot of things to say about this deck. I'm sure there are longer videos out there, but mathematically 7 riffle shovels, 7, my voice is going slightly, you can probably tell. 7 riffle shuffles is random. So I haven't been counting, but in theory we should have a pretty random deck. So put the deck off to the side, Commander over here. Let's see what we've got. So this is an example of something we wouldn't keep. But this deck we're happy to go to 4. We've got 2 lands and a ramp source, but these this isn't a ramp source in this hand, so there's not enough for us to get our game going. I'm just going to put them for the bottom, just for the sake of doing this a bit quicker. So we'll see what we've got. So maybe this isn't as random as I thought, because this does have this. That's, this makes hands a lot more keepable, but no, we'd happily go to 6 on this one. Let's see what we've got. Okay, so, yeah, this one is going to be a keep, probably. It's actually pretty interesting. Because we do have, I've never actually had these both in the same hand before. Maybe I haven't shuffled as well as I thought I did, because, they were next to each other when we were shuffling. But we do have those two. That means we could potentially have a, we play this turn 1 tap. We have a turn 2 Inga. That's pretty unique. We're looking at a turn 3. Let's just keep this and see how it goes. Genesis is great, but we do have the colorless land here and here, so I'm gonna bottom it. Other lines we could go for are turn 1 this, turn 2 this, then we'd have access to more colored mana. But we'll start the game with this on the board and just exile this. We don't need our big threat. So let's see how the game goes. What time do we get a Maelstrom Wanderer out with this nut start? So we start with this. I think we won't want to... We've drawn a land. So we don't really need to get Ingra out in a rush. I think... Maybe we just go for a Myriad Landscape. Okay, let's see if that backfires. Coalition Relic, yeah, it kind of does. So we play this. And we could play the Coalition Relic. But we probably still do, don't we? No, because we can get mana for it for free next turn. So we're going to go turn 2. We're going to get double forest because we've got this Castle Garenbrig here. So that can enter untapped. Forest. So maybe I didn't riffle shuffle my deck properly enough because it is a little harder with 100 cards for Commander. I'm not going to do it 7 times now because I'm a big cheat when I'm playing by myself. Yeah, so turn 2, Myriad Landscape. That's fine. Turn 3. So we can go Coalition Relic. We can play this. And then we can go 4 mana. So while we can store mana with this, if we're playing Inga, we're getting a land anyway. So it kind of doesn't matter. Oh, that's a little bit low down, isn't it? Should we do that there? There we go. Lovely. Because if we're using the mana, we're basically storing the mana anyway. So now we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then so we got the choice here. We want to play a tap land, we want to play an untapped land. Do we want to leave these up to attack with? Do we want to leave this up to get mana? But because we've got both Selvala in our deck and a Kroom, I think it's going to be better to hold these lands. So we decided we want to play a tap land, we want the extra green. We could play the Castle Garenbrig to get an extra green initially, and then we'll be able to leave both of these up. But I think I just want to see what we're going to hit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Maelstrom Wanderer. Let's move it down so we can see it again. So, first Cascade, a Balefire Dragon. That's going to wipe someone's board. Lovely. Gwenna. Not the right time to get it. Would have rather that in the other order. But that will do. That means we can play a free... We could, if we played the untapped land, add Karuga to hand. But it is a bit more vulnerable in the hand than the command zone. So while I will do that often, while we've got a tap land, I'll just play that. So here, we won't be getting in for a ton. But I think it is turn 4, did we say? And we've got in for 13 damage and wiped someone's board. So that's pretty good. From there, we've got Selvala Stampede, Cavalier, Karuga. We're going to be doing some good stuff. So with that, I think that's, more or less all I've got to say on Maelstrom Wanderer for now. Almost an hour. If you've got to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I genuinely have no idea if anyone's going to watch this, but it's a video I wanted to make. And I did get a little burnt out making a lot of videos in Over. That's why the channel's had a little slowdown. But I have still got quite a few videos planned. It's going to take time to produce. But this one, I don't how much should I edit this? I don't know. But anyway, thanks so much for spending this time with me. Hopefully you feel a little bit more of my love for Maelstrom Wanderer now as well. And I'll see you in the next one.